Perfect. Good morning and welcome to our webinar today, Finding Summer Retreats, a guide to discovering the perfect recreational property. My name is Jeff Nazuka. I'm the lead account executive here at AcreValue, and today we'll be talking about how to find the perfect recreational property for you this summer. Specifically, we'll start with an overview of popular recreational property types. Then let's talk about the process of finding and acquiring, or maybe getting permission to use those properties. The first step of which is to actually search and find the property. Then you'll want to identify the landowner and reach out for a sale or a rental lease conversation. Finally, we'll cover a few strategies to come prepared to your conversation with the landowner and make sure you're knowledgeable about the property in question. So now that it's the end of May, kids are finishing the school year, for example, and it's time to find a vacation spot for the summer. Where do you start? Well, the good thing is that America is full of fantastic recreational properties. There's definitely something for everyone, right? So let's talk about some of the most popular recreational properties available. One of the most popular property types is the waterfront property. This could be a lake house or riverfront property, maybe even somewhere next to the ocean. These types of properties are great for all sorts of water activities. So that could include fishing, swimming, boating, and anything else to do with marine activities there. If you want to be somewhere a bit closer to nature, let's say, America has national parks and forests across 30 states. So there's a wide variety of national parks and forests. And if you're looking to go hiking, fishing, camping, or simply just being in nature, there is a national park out there for you. If a national park is a bit too far, you'll likely have a regional or local park that is a lot more accessible to you in terms of distance. These parks are also great places for similar types of outdoor activities, camping, hiking, biking, fishing, and more. And of course, open fields and land are definitely popular. I think a big part because of their versatility. So if you want to host a big gathering, maybe use some ATVs or other motorsports, there should be a parcel of land that will fit your needs for those activities as well. There are a lot of options for recreational properties, right? We just covered 4 of the most popular ones, but there are plenty more. So really the question becomes, how do you actually find the right property for you? And then if it's a private property, how do you get permission to be there? How do you get permission to actually use the property for recreational purposes? Well, you'll want to start by searching for a property that fits your goals. So maybe that's going to be a lakefront property, open land, somewhere close to a national park, whatever those criteria are for you. Next, it's definitely worthwhile to identify the landowner and find their contact information. Again, if you're looking at buying, renting, or using a private property, it is critical to contact the owner to get their permission before getting started. And in preparation for that conversation with the owner, you'll likely want to come prepared by knowing important details about the property, right? That will help you show that you are serious about not only using their property, but you've also taken the time to really dig in and understand the property's details and characteristics, hopefully showing that, you're going to be a good steward, right? You're going to be taking care of the property during your time there. So let's hop into the AcreValue site and we'll cover those main steps from finding a property, identifying and contacting the landowner, and going into the preparing for the conversation that you're going to have with them. So the first thing we're going to do here is let's visit the AcreValue map, which I've got pulled up on my screen now. The AcreValue map, for those of us who haven't seen this yet, this is an interactive GIS-based map where all properties across the United States are going to be listed up on this map, especially ones that are for agricultural or rural uses, and a lot of recreational properties are going to be on here as well. This conversation that we're having today, this is going to be about recreational properties, of course, right? So like waterfronts and national parks. Therefore, my first recommendation is to turn on the new water bodies and fee lands map layers, which you can find on the AcreValue map using this map layers toggle button in the top left corner of the map here. Once you select that toggle data button, you'll be able to see all of the different types of map layers that you can turn on and off on AcreValue. Of particular relevance to our discussion today are the protected areas, in particular the fee lands. So those are your local, national, and regional parks. And then we also have water bodies loaded on here as well. So these are different types of lakes, rivers, streams, and other water locations. So I've got those visible on my map now. You can turn them on or off by checking these check boxes to the right. And you can see that as I have these data sets loaded on my map, you'll be able to hover over them and be able to view more information. So for example, I've got this large fee land here. This looks like it's a national forest. I can click on that and I'll be able to see more information about it, such as its name is actually Finger Lakes National Forest. There's a good amount of acreage, and I can see that it is open access and it's managed for multiple uses. That's fantastic. That means that might be a place where I can go camping, for example. Over to the east of the Finger Lakes National Forest, we've also got a lake. So let's take a look at some information about this lake. Click on it. This is called Cayuga Lake. It is a very deep, long lake, perfect for boating. And so what I think we should do here is let's start by finding a property that I'm interested in. And for this example, let's start by finding a property that's nearby to the lake and nearby to either a national or a local forest or state park. So if I zoom in here towards this area of the map, I can also see that there's a state park here. It's called Taganic Falls State Park. Fantastic. That's very close to the lake here. What I'm going to do is let's zoom in further. And as I get closer to the surface level on the map, I'll start to see that there are some lakefront properties here that are of interest to me in this example. So let's take a deeper look at some of these lakefront properties here. I can use my map to hover over the property boundaries and see more info about each. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select one of these properties and see exactly what information AcreValue can provide here. So let's take a look at this property here. It's about an acre and a half or just under an acre and a half, and it looks like it is owned by George and Darlene Best, according to the tax record. Critically, it is also a lakefront property, so it's bordering the lake. It looks like it's got a little dock there, and it is right up against Taganic State Park as well. So if we wanted to go boating, we could do that. If we wanted to go hiking in the state park, we could certainly do that as well. So now I've got some info about the property, which is great. I've got, your basics. How big is the property? Where is it located? And most critically, I have who is the owner. The next question becomes, how do I get in touch with them, right? I need to be able to get in touch with the owner, especially if this is a private property, in order to actually go to their property and use it for recreational use with their permission. And so what I can do here, I've got a couple of options on AcreValue. Number one, I can start with using the owner address that is listed on the tax record as the address to send information and mailers to these particular owners. And so for these owners, it looks like their tax record states that they have an address in Scottsdale, Arizona, that I can send a letter to and say, hello, introduce myself and say, I'd like to use this land for recreational purposes. Is that something that you would be open to? And starting a conversation that way. Um, that's on the direct mail side. If I want to get in touch with them a little bit quicker, maybe a little bit more digitally, I also have the option on AcreValue to be able to search for phone numbers and email addresses using this magnifying glass icon just to the right of the owner's name. This will allow me to search a national database for the owner's phone and email. So let's go ahead and give that a shot here. I'm going to click on this. and it looks like there was a match with the national database for George and Darlene Best. It looks like we've got a few phone numbers here. We've got some email addresses as well for both George and Darlene. And if I want to reach out to them via a direct mailer, I also have a few alternative addresses to try and send a mailer to get in touch with them that way as well. So in terms of getting in touch, we've covered the major three, right? This is sending mailers, giving them a phone call, sending them an email. Those are going to be the three best ways to try and get in touch with the landowner in order to start that conversation to get permissions about using their property for recreational purposes. Now, once we've gotten in touch with them, of course, the next step is to have that conversation with the landowner and say, you know what, I am interested in using this property for maybe boating or just as a home base for my summer recreation. May I have your permission, right? And so the best way to come prepared for that conversation, in my experience, is to understand as much as possible about the property, to really speak to the property from the perspective of owner to owner or owner to tenant, to ensure to the owner that you have the best the best case in mind for the property in that perspective. So let's take a look at what we can find out about this property. And hopefully being prepared with all this information will allow us to have that conversation as smoothly as possible. And so what I'm going to do here, of course, I can see all of the summary information, but I want to get visuals as well. So I'm going to get a full report, which is this blue button down here. Let's go ahead and hit that get full report button. I actually have the report pulled up over here. So let's take a look at this report. So for this particular property, I can see that there is a good amount of slope as well. So it is pretty slopey. It is on the edge of a pretty deep lake. So I can understand that there's a good amount of slopes here. Related to the slope is your elevation. So it looks like it increases in elevation about 100 feet through the course of a 1.5 acre property. That is fairly steep. I can also see things like vegetation on the property from recently. We also have soil survey maps available for you. So if you wanted to use this property for other open land type of use cases, you could certainly see what kind of soils are available. Land use history as well. You know, is it forest? Is it cropland? Is it something else? You'll be able to track all of this information through this AcreValue report that you generate on the property. And of course, most critically, the ownership will be there as well. So in terms of getting in touch with the owner, this is going to be another place where you can find that owner information. When it comes time to preparing for the report, I've also even found that providing a property report to the owner is a definite token of good faith there. And so for these reports, you can actually print them. Notice in the top right corner of the screen on AcreValue, you have the option to print, download, and share the property reports that you generate. So all that entails is let's click the download button. You get the option to configure the different pieces of information that are going to be in your download. Hit continue once you're happy with that, and then you can hit print icons, download, and then you can share it via either Facebook, X, or via email directly. I've got a printed version of this report ready for you. So let's quickly take a look here. On the printed version, you'll also be able to see land value information. So this is pertaining to comparable sales or other sales of properties that are similar. If you're going to be having a conversation about potentially buying the property outright, you'll definitely want to be prepared with information on land values, which most real estate professionals get with a combination of other similar sales of properties in the area. So this will be fantastic for that purpose. Again, through this printed version, you'll be able to see different property maps, such as your elevation, vegetation, soil types, crop histories, all of the previous maps that we saw on the digital report, you can include them within this printable version as well. All of this is set up automatically for you so that you don't have to screen capture or take photos or anything like that. The system will automatically generate this neat PDF for you so that it'll be ready to either save for your own records or to pass on to the landowner as well. So if we think about, what we were able to do and accomplish, we started by saying, I have, a basic need for recreational property. The goal is somewhere that is close to some hiking ground, maybe some camping ground, but also close to the lake. We were able to find a property that fit those criteria. We were able to generate a full report where I can see all of the relevant info about that property, as well as the ownership. And finally, I was able to prepare for a conversation with the owner about getting in touch, about using the property for recreational use cases. I have contact information. I've got all the information on the property, and that should give me everything to have that conversation politely with them. So in terms of, the best case scenario for your property search for your recreation this summer, it should look something like this. Now let's go through some edge cases, right? There are certainly going to be some edge cases for searching for properties, and so we should definitely take a look at how AcreValue tackles those. We do have some options here for power user tools as well, which we'll be talking about in these edge cases. And so let's take the example, going back to step one of our process, right? Searching for the property. If I know that I want to look for properties that have certain types of land use, for example, maybe I'm looking for that open field, or maybe I'm looking for the forested lands, I have that option to go into the filters here and say, I want to search, state and county for specific types of properties. And those may be a certain acreage size, those may be a certain land use, as I was saying. So you can search for things like cropland. Maybe you want to find grass pasture land for kind of that open ranch feel. If you wanted to find timberlands for hiking or forestry, you could certainly do that on here. And once you apply those filters, just hit this apply filters button, this blue button here. That'll run the search so that all of the properties that fit those criteria are going to show up on the map here. Now, another interesting edge case that we should cover is not every property is going to be registered under, let's say, an individual landowner, right? So in this case that we saw earlier, this is owned by George and Darlene Best, which makes it a little bit easier to reach out to those landowners too, of course, right? If you know that there is an individual who you're talking to, their name is George, for example, it's just a little bit easier to have that conversation, especially if you start by giving them a phone call. But in cases where, properties are not owned by an individual landowner, you can still reach out to them, but the conversation gets a little bit trickier just because, you have to address somebody who's an individual, of course, but listed on the tax record as a business or an LLC. And so let's take a look at an example of how AcreValue kind of helps you get around that and figures out who the individual landowners are. Just down the road here, there is another property with a few different docks here. Looks like this one is owned by Oak Harbor homeowners. And so if I was to try and search for their contact information, I've got an address via a mail, but whenever I try to call them or to email them, maybe send them a letter, I'm going to have to address it to Oak Harbor homeowners. That there's not really a person that I can really communicate with super well until they actually get back to me, right? And so in order to make this conversation a little bit more personable, what we want to try and do is we'll try and see whether there is an individual linked to this business, Oak Harbor homeowners. And one way that we've found that's very effective to try and link business entities to individuals is to search for all properties that are owned by a particular address. essentially saying if a property has the same address on the tax record for mailing correspondence or mailing taxes or anything like that, they're likely going to be related between the individual and the business LLC, right? And so what we can do on AcreValue is to search for all parcels that have this particular owner mailing address listed on the tax record. And that's an option that you can see on my card right here. I'll be able to click that. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull up all properties that are in this county, for example, that have the owner mailing address as 5240 Oak Harbor Road. And I can see actually just down the road, there's another property here demarcated by this yellow property boundary that might be owned by the same landowners as Oak Harbor homeowners. But what we're checking is to see, is this an individual? And amazingly, in this case, yes, it is. It looks like this is owned by Thomas and Geraldine Manahan, who I can then go ahead and look for an owner's phone and email address for. And that changes our strategy a little bit in terms of outreach, right? Now I know that Thomas and Geraldine Manahan have the same mailing address registered as Oak Harbor homeowners. So when I contact Oak Harbor homeowners, I could try by starting with Thomas and Geraldine. It's likely that they're going to be related to the business in some form or fashion. That lets the conversation become a little bit more personable, adds a little bit more flavor to the conversation where they also know that you've done the extra step of trying to find an individual and reaching out to that individual and starting that conversation there. So those power user tools, the search by owner address, the search by certain characteristics of properties, so land use history, acreage size, maybe soils or road frontage, for example. Those filters are going to be some of the power user options. And so let's talk about how to get started on AcreValue for your needs, in which case I'm going to flip back over to the PowerPoint here. So if you are in the mood to buy just needing basic info and tools, I just want to be able to search one particular property maybe, or I have an idea of which property I'm curious about and I just need some landowner info, you can certainly purchase a subscription at acrevalue.com online. That is available for you in both monthly and annual terms. I will also mention for new consumers who are going to get started with the consumer level subscription online, we do have a coupon code that will begin distributing tomorrow. So just keep an eye out for that via email. We'll be sending a coupon code your way as part of this webinar. For folks who are going to be using a little bit more of the power tools, searches and that sort of thing, or if you need to use AcreValue for commercial purposes, maybe you're a realtor, for example, and you want to use AcreValue to try and help your clients buy and sell recreational ground, reach out to us, contact myself or my sales team for a custom quote. We'd be happy to meet with you, learn more about your needs, and then make sure that we can put together the right subscription package and level for your needs. And so that covers a lot of the content that we wanted to review on this webinar here. Now it's time for our Q&A session here. So let's take a look at a couple of questions. If there are any questions in the chat, please feel free to post them and I'll be able to help with answering those. Let's take a look.
I do have a question that was sent directly to me, and it said, "Is there any way to determine if a parcel of land has an existing lease on it?"
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Let's show you how to find that information. On AcreValue, there is a portion of our website called the community. And what that is it's a place where landowners, lessees, folks who are involved in land generally can gather and post updates about their land or maybe advertise that they want to lease their land as well. And so if I zoom into this area in New York, we can start to see there are some folks who might be selling land through the community. Maybe there's natural forest land for sale. There are ways where you can find whether there are other leases on that property or not. And so this is a great place to go check to see if that property that you're curious about has any existing ownership or any existing leases that are active on there. I do see. Oh, I have a direct question to me as well. I hope that for the person who had asked that, let me know if there are any other clarifications, or feel free to send a question back to Dawn, and Dawn will pass it over to me. I do have a direct question over to me, which is about recording of the webinar. Real quick, so for folks who joined later, we are recording this webinar. If you are curious about getting that recording, we will be distributing after the webinar is done, and we'll be distributing via email. We've got a question from Jay Rowe here. Is this a flag-shaped dock? Looks like a yes. You might be referring to that original property here that we were looking at, I hope. It looks like it could be. We'll be able to use kind of the satellite base map imagery to see that. And also, if you want to, you can turn off this water bodies data set just to get a real clear look at the dock off of this property here. It looks like it is some sort of an L shape, so that's quite interesting. Alrighty, any other questions here? That's a great question too. Yeah, thank you for sending that in, Shannon. So another question that was sent in is, will you be getting hiking trails on the website? And that's a really exciting feature for us. The answer is yes. We do have several new features coming out soon, so keep an eye out for those, especially as we're talking about recreational purposes this summer. Those new features include hiking trails, geology layers, opportunity zones, and organic farms. And so if you're interested in using AcreValue to go find recreational property and you want to go hiking, we'll be loading in hiking trails, for example, into the data sets very soon here. If you are potentially a landowner or a farmer and you're curious about, other organic farms or opportunity zones, we'll have that information for you as well. So very excited to see those come out over the next few weeks and months. Alrighty, perfect. And then a follow-up question to the question about leases. So regarding the community posting for leases, is that information sourced externally or is that all within AcreValue? So yeah, that's a great question. For the most part, that is crowdsourced. Essentially, the users on AcreValue have a place to post, hey, I'm looking for these types of land, or in the cases of leases, hey, I have a particular property here. Maybe I am open to leasing it to somebody, or there is already a lease. All of that is really driven by our users on the system and how they want to post. So it's up to the users. And also one thing I haven't mentioned yet about the community posting and accessing is free. So whether you have an AcreValue subscription or not, as long as you've got some level of AcreValue account, you'll be able to visit the community, go take a look at some of the other options available in terms of leases, in terms of maybe folks who are looking to sell their land or looking to lease their land to a developer or to, in this case, recreational property searchers. We've got one more question. We've got one more minute here. Let's hold open the Q&A for one more question, perhaps, if we can get one. Okay, it looks like we're good so far. Again, what I will do here is let me post up my contact information. You can always email me or give me a phone call, and I'd be happy to assist you with your property search, as well as, if there are other enterprise solutions that you would like to learn about, let me know, and we are here to help. If you do have other questions about searching for recreational properties specifically that, we didn't cover in this demonstration, let me know. And I'd be happy to set up a one-on-one meeting with you, maybe something short, 15, 30 minutes or something, so that way we can cover that, make sure that you've got your questions answered, and find the right path forward for you on AcreValue. I will leave this screen up so that if you do have any questions or comments, feel free to just write down this contact information, or feel free to take a screenshot here. Otherwise, this is the end of the webinar. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and keep an eye out for the recording as well as a coupon code coming soon. Thank you again for joining.